Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another season of the Air Raid Hour. On tonight's episode, we are diving into everything you need to know about the Buffalo Bills 2025 training camp, from key position battles and top storylines to roster locks and surprise contenders. We've got all of that and more coming your way. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another season of the Air Raid Hour. We got some people already coming into the chat. We got just the typical new coming in saying only here so I don't get fined. And Eric K saying good to see you back, Judge. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. I've been out the last couple of months with some technical issues. The technical issues being I use my work computer for this podcast, and my work took my computer for the summer. So I did not have the technology to podcast this summer, but it was a much needed break. Very well rested, ready to go. Dave, thank you for holding down the fort for us here at the Air Raid Hour with your summer scouting series, and ready to get back at it because the NFL dead season is almost over. I mean, being on social media the past month, because I took like a little 2-month hiatus from Twitter, we've got alternate uniform talk. We've got the annual Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, debate. I think a new low for Bill's Twitter is the dueling takes on the individual wide receiver workouts of Elijah Moore and Keon Coleman. Like, it was peak summer content, but training camp is just 2 days away, maybe even 1 day away if you are listening to this on demand tomorrow. So we made it, Dave.
We made it. Summer scouting series was fun. We did 4 different episodes of that, 4 different position groups. So hopefully we can bring that back again next summer. I think it certainly was a benefit to me in my process, right? As far as like doing this the draft process every year now for several years, it definitely felt like it's going to help me going into this college football season. And then obviously we've got training camp now just starting on Wednesday. So we're really just getting thrown back into the thick of things now. So good timing for us to come back. And of course, like all the different stuff happening with the Bills Stadium videos, the videos of the players working out. So it's now all coming to actual football, real camp battles. And it'll really now start to feel like football is back.
John Wolf coming in saying, LFG just got my PSLs and my season tickets for the new stadium today. That's
Very
awesome.
Cool.
The
cool.
Stadium looks incredible. By the way, for anyone who saw that drone footage and stuff of how that stadium's come along, it's going to be awesome, right? Well, we all had our debate about where the stadium should be placed, whether it should be downtown or whether it should be in Orchard Park, or whether it should have a dome or whether it shouldn't. But I think most people at this point can appreciate that this stadium's going to be pretty freaking cool once it is built. So congrats to you, John. That sounds absolutely incredible. You mentioned training camp starts just 2 days from now. The Buffalo Bills' first practice is Wednesday morning, which means they report tomorrow. We'll be seeing all those sort of report back to camp videos, which are always sort of fun on social media. This year, the Buffalo Bills are featured on Hard Knocks, so that's going to give us plenty of content to talk about.
August 5th, first episode is when it is. So
9 p.m. And then I think that's a Tuesday. So every Tuesday after that for about 4 or 5 weeks. Preseason starts on Saturday, August 9th, 1 p.m. versus Brian Dable and the New York Giants. Roster cut down day is my birthday, Tuesday, August 26th. And the regular season kicks off on Sunday Night Football, Sunday, September 7th. That's a whopping 49 days away. So we still got a lot to talk about before the regular season gets underway. And we are going to do that tonight by previewing training camp. But before we do, quick word from our sponsors here.
What's up, y'all? Khalil Shakir here. When I want Buffalo pizza, it's got to be Picasso's.
Khalil Shakir. Your team, our pizza. Picasso's. This is Buffalo Pizza.
Awesome to announce here. We have re-upped with Picasso's Pizza for another season as the flagship sponsor here at the Air Raid Hour. Head on over to picassospizza.net. Get your online orders in. And you just need to be in Western New York. You can be literally anywhere. And you can order Picasso's Pizza. They will deliver it right to your door. It tastes just as good as ordering it from the restaurant. So head on over to picassospizza.net and hook yourself up for the regular season. All right, Dave, let's get into training camp now, and let's just go sort of position by position, and we'll start with the offense because that was the fun stuff last year. And the defense, and we'll get to that in a little bit, might be the fun stuff this year because there's a lot of intrigue there. But let's start with the offense. They averaged 30.9 points per game last season. They had the NFL MVP in Josh Allen leading the way with his 5th consecutive season of 40-plus touchdowns, only quarterback ever in the history of football to do that. Conversation for another day is Josh Allen's probably already a first ballot Hall of Famer. Buffalo Bills offense set an NFL record for being the first team ever with 30 passing touchdowns and 30 rushing touchdowns in a single season. They tied the NFL record with the most different receivers catching a touchdown pass with 13. There's probably going to be some regression this year, or at least it's going to be stagnant around 30 points per game. It's hard to keep that pace when the Buffalo Bills offense set the bar so high last season.
Set the bar so high last season, especially with some of those statistics you mentioned, and that was obviously all in the face, or in the wake, I should say, of the trade of Stephon Diggs before the season. We know that there were some questions about what that Bills offense would be like without Stephon Diggs, and they answered the bell. Truly a team effort. James Cook had those 16 rushing touchdowns as well last year, which was a huge regression for him back to the mean above what it was from the year prior. We only had 2 rushing TDs. So yeah, the offense really, I think in a way, there's no other way to put it. I think they exceeded the expectations, I think, of everybody that was pegging them for going into the season last year. Yes, you had Josh Allen, but you had a rookie Keon Coleman. You had a questionably healthy Curtis Samuel. You didn't have Stephon Diggs. You weren't sure if Dalton Kincaid was going to maybe take a step up in year 2. That actually didn't happen for the Bills. And in the face of all of that, they still put up all these numbers. And so if the Bills can average 30 points per game again this season, that's a huge success. I don't expect that they really need to build on anything from a year ago statistically. Yeah. If they can do exactly what they did a year ago, or even if it's slightly less, right, you're still going to be one of the top offenses in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I think the expectation for this offense should be right around 28 points per game. That, I think, is sort of like the smallest number you'd like to see there in terms of points per game average. And anything above that is obviously golden. And then if the defense steps up, that should be more than enough. And the Buffalo Bills have made a ton of additions to that defense, but not surprising. The Buffalo Bills didn't make a lot of adjustments on offense. The offensive line comes back intact. They've made very minimal moves. Obviously they extended Khalil Shakir. They brought in a man beater and Josh Palmer, which I think is going to give you a little bit more stability there than Amari Cooper, who was in and out of the lineup with injuries. Keon Coleman going into year 2, Curtis Samuel finally healthy. I think the Buffalo Bills are banking on player development from some of their younger guys, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Ray Davis, and obviously bringing in a couple of guys they hope can put this unit over the top, and guys like Elijah Moore, who was a late addition, and a guy like Josh Palmer. We're going to get to all that, but let's start with the quarterback room. And Truth and Show comes in and says, lots of extra cheek hair equals Super Bowl bound. Let's go, Wolfman Judge. Yeah, trying something different with the beard. I didn't trim it down on the cheeks. I'm letting the hair grow up the cheeks. So maybe that's a good omen for the Buffalo Bills. Somebody pointed out on social media, and again, peak summer content. This is the first year Josh Allen didn't smile in his team photograph. So that could be an omen, a sign of things to come. Josh Allen might be going absolute like elite sicko mode this year as opposed to just sicko mode. So we have that to look forward to come training camp. And I think Hard Knocks is going to be really awesome to watch because there's really not much to talk about with this quarterback group, right? Like, oh, Mitch Trubisky versus Mike White versus Shane Buechele for QB2. It's cool. Whatever. We have this conversation every summer, right? About the QB2 position. With Hard Knocks, I think you're going to start to see, and we've heard stories and we've seen some of it, right? But you're going to really get to see Josh Allen and his leadership, like visually see it behind the scenes, things that we've never seen before. You're going to see the way he interacts with his teammates. You're going to see the way he leads his football team. You're going to see the way he sort of assembles the offense and runs the offense, along with Joe Brady through training camp. You're going to see the way he interacts with all the players. I think that's going to be some really cool insight that we're going to glean that we wouldn't otherwise have gleaned if not for having Hard Knocks present at Buffalo Bills training camp this year.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a little bit more, how do I say, authenticity. And I'm not going to say that the Bills Embedded series is not authentic, because it obviously is. But I think the Bills Embedded series is put out by the Buffalo Bills, and they do a really good job. And Bills fans have been spoiled with that series and getting some of this behind the scenes over the last several years. And the production quality is top notch and it's excellent. But I think what you'll get from Hard Knocks is a little bit more authenticity, in the sense of it might not always be, the rah, yes, like everything's this, whatever. But you're going to see how it really is behind the scenes, I think, in certain circumstances. And Josh Allen's leadership, I'm sure, will shine through. And that's one thing, even when we get to see some of the pregame speeches and the stuff in the tunnel and all that, like, you're going to see more of that probably as well, especially on the practice field, and sort of give you a sense of how what he's doing on the practice field leads up to those moments in the tunnel or on the field. And that's, I was a little bit like not sure if I was like happy or not that the Bills were on Hard Knocks, because I wasn't sure if it would be like a distraction. And maybe that's my McDermott shirt coming out here, right? But as a fan, I love the Hard Knocks production and watching that every year, especially the training camp one. And so it is exciting. It is going to be exciting to see the Bills on that this year.
Yeah. And how great is it to have Josh Allen? David Price comes in and says, agree about the offense. It's superb that anything less than 28 points per game would feel foreign at this point. Yeah, we are definitely spoiled here. And Josh Allen plays a large role in that. I think his leadership too, this is the next iteration of Josh Allen almost as well, right? Like, I don't want to get too much into this because, like, this isn't TMZ or anything, but Josh Allen is married now, right? Like, this is like the next phase of Josh Allen's life. And how is that going to affect his leadership ability? That'll be something that's going to be really interesting to watch as well. And of course, every year we got the QB2 battle. Is this the year Mitch Trubisky gets unseated? Can Mike White give him a run? Can Shane Buechele give Mitch Trubisky a run and finally usurp, Mitch Trubisky for that QB2 spot? I think the Buffalo Bills will only keep two quarterbacks. Obviously, Josh Allen is the lock. And I think you'll probably see a situation like last year where week 14, 15, 16, they'll call up that third quarterback to have the emergency quarterback for the playoffs. But going into the regular season, there can only be two, or there will likely only be two. Who is that number two guy going to be, you think?
I mean, the Bills have a very kind of odd fascination with Mitch Trubisky. They didn't cut him to save the $2.5 million that they could have at any point during this offseason. For those reasons, like, my head is saying it's probably going to be Mitch Trubisky again. But I think in my heart, and again, look, this is the QB2. Like, these aren't superstars. These aren't these aren't even above average NFL quarterbacks. But I think for me, like, Mike White feels a bit more like a gamer at this stage, that if you were going to put him in a game, in a situation, like, you feel like he could maybe give you a spark or make something happen, to where I don't necessarily have that same feeling for Mitch Trubisky. So whatever happens. My head right now says it's going to be Mitch, but I think right now, going into camp without seeing anything, I'd probably want Mike White.
Onto the running back position, the Buffalo Bills have three guys who are essentially roster locks: James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, all returning from last season. You also have in the room Frank Gore Jr. and Darrington Evans. Frank Gore Jr. is on the practice squad all year last year. Darrington Evans was on the streets. Like, I know the Buffalo Bills cut him with an injury towards the end of the regular season. They kept him on the injured reserve, and then they brought him back and they waived him, but he's back now. So this is the Buffalo Bills running back room. I think all eyes are going to be on James Cook, obviously. And it might even be one of the storylines of Hard Knocks, because he wants that new contract. Literally almost every single person who needs a new contract, except for him, unless you want to count like David Edwards or Connor McGovern, got new contracts this offseason. So all eyes are going to be on James Cook, his effort, his attitude, his presence, every word of his press conferences are going to be psychoanalyzed. His body language is going to be psychoanalyzed. There might be some questions early on whether he's holding in every time he maybe misses a practice for a rest day. Like there will be a lot of intrigue around James Cook and the situation that he sort of created for himself here.
Yeah, but the other thing with James Cook is he's never been like a big vocal guy, right? Either. Yeah. So, like the psychoanalysis of that is going to have to come with some like reasonableness, at least from my perspective, to say like this guy's never been a big talker as it was anyway when it comes to press conferences and things like that. Let me see how he does when the real games are on the line and he's in there, for real game action. So. Look, is it looking like it might be James Cook's last year in a Bills uniform? Maybe so, right? If I had to bet right now, it probably would say he's probably not going to be with the team beyond 2025. But man, let's have him carry, some of this load and send himself out on a good note and hopefully win a ring as part of his last year in Buffalo. And I think he will be motivated because he is going to be looking for that next contract beyond 2025. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of low effort from him when it comes to the real games. Now in training camp, I don't know, but yeah, I think you're still going to see a very good and motivated James Cook when it comes time for the regular season.
A lot of the attention is going to be on James Cook, and understandably so, but my attention, I think, in my eyes, are going to be on Ray Davis heading into year 2. Maybe I'm sleeping on Ty Johnson and Ty Johnson's impact. Maybe I'm taking him for granted here, but I want to talk a little bit about Ray Davis here because I think heading into year 2, based off of what we saw in year 1, knowing James Cook is in his contract year and he's probably not going to be back next year, the Buffalo Bills are going to want to get more than just Ray Davis's feet wet this year. So I think the question then becomes, how much can he eat into James Cook's role?
Well, I want to ask you this, and maybe you know this off the top of your head, but I did the same thing with Joe DeRosa when we were talking about the running backs. If you had to guess off the top of your head, how many carries James Cook had last year?
It wasn't a lot. Wasn't it like 157?
207. And how many for Ray Davis?
So 207 for James Cook. Ray Davis, 85.
113
okay,
carries for Ray
I'm
Davis
really bad at that.
last year.
Yeah.
No, but my point being is they were within 100 carries of each other. Mm-hmm. And my point being is James Cook only got 207 carries. Ray Davis got 113 carries last year. I know a lot of that was sort of some inefficient carries and in grinding out games at the end. But to be honest, James Cook already had an under 50% snap share last year. I don't know how much you're going to see a huge uptick in Ray Davis's usage on top of the fact that you mentioned they still love Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson 18 receptions last year, Ray Davis 17. So like in a season where you felt like Ty Johnson was the one making all the big catches on third downs and all this, he only had one more reception than Ray Davis on the entire season. So look, I know he stepped in on that Jets game when James Cook was out, but I would just caution people to, on the expectations for Ray Davis when it comes to statistics and his carries and all that this year. It wouldn't surprise me if he was still around that 113, we'll say 100 and maybe 25, 130 carry mark this year. But I don't think you're going to see a guy that's going to get 150 carries all of a sudden.
Yeah, keep him nice and rested for 2026. He's got to carry the ball 300 times. I like the way you think.
I'm just saying.
Reggie Gilliam. There are some people who want to talk about like Reggie Gilliam's job security. We're not going to talk about that tonight. Reggie Gilliam obviously solidified himself as the fullback of this football team, 4-phase special teamer. So let's move on to the wide receiver position. And honestly, I really like this room. And we're going to have tons of conversation all summer about this room. Khalil Shakir got the extension. He's sort of your number one receiver, even though he's not a prototypical number one. He works mostly from the slot. He's got that outside flexibility. You brought in Josh Palmer and you paid him some decent money. Why do you pay him? Because he's younger and he has proven analytically that he can beat man coverage. And he's shown that he can beat man coverage, something the Buffalo Bills struggled with. You got Keon Coleman heading into year 2. You got Curtis Samuel, the sort of the gadget guy, fully healthy. And then you got the speed that Elijah Moore brings to the table and that inside outside versatility, even though he's mostly an inside guy. We loved his game at Ole Miss. We'll talk about Elijah Moore here more in a second. Battling for the receiver 6 spot if we decide to keep 6 receivers, guys like Tyrell Shavers, Caden Prather, Laviska Shenault, Jalen Virgil, Christian Wilkinson, KJ Hamler, someone named Steven Gosnell. We got a white receiver, so that's cool. And Kelly Akiariai. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, nor do I think I'll have to learn how to pronounce his name as sort of the guys at the back half of the depth chart. Sorry, I didn't mean to it's first podcast back. I'm going to be east back. I'm going to be a little salty here and there and a little rough around the edges. But I'll tell you what, I do want to temper my expectations for this room a little bit. And here is why. I'm still having nightmares reminiscing about last training camp with how excited I got for Curtis Samuel and the way that he was just blowing up every training camp practice and having all these huge practices. And next thing you know, 2 weeks, he's like missing practice. And then he was non-existent for a majority of the season due to his injuries. So my expectations are tempered. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low based on what we see in training camp, but I am genuinely excited about this group of 5 receivers the Buffalo Bills have this year.
I'm excited about it. We loved Elijah Moore, like you mentioned, in the pre-draft process a couple years ago. He's still only 25 years old. I think as a whole, this group going into camp looks better than the group we had going into camp a year ago. Obviously, it was Curtis Samuel's first year. Weren't really sure how he was going to be used. Then he got the injury. That kind of derailed things. Keon Coleman as a rookie, obviously a lot of pressure was put on him because Stephon Diggs' departure. Shakir did his thing. We know that's going to be the case, and he'll continue to be Josh's go-to guy. Elijah Moore, a nice late addition to the room. Josh Palmer, I'm certainly keeping my expectations tempered for a guy like Josh Palmer as well. I don't think he is going to necessarily, all of a sudden be this Pro Bowl type of player, but he does give you some more offensive prowess, I think, than maybe a guy like Mac Hollins did, although Mac was good at drawing penalties. So as a whole, I think offensively, not necessarily counting the special teams side of things, but offensively, I like this group a little bit better than I liked the group going into last year. I will continue to temper my expectations, though, like you.
It's really interesting, right? Let's talk about Palmer and let's talk about Keon Coleman a little bit here, because obviously Palmer was brought in because of his man-to-man prowess and his ability to beat man coverage. You have Keon Coleman going into year 2. The rumors are he's been working out with Josh Allen. So that's really interesting that Josh Allen has chosen Keon Coleman as a guy he wants to pass with this offseason. It could just be scheduling. There could have been other receivers there, et cetera. We don't know, but that's just what I heard. So that's cool. So you have Coleman in year 2. You have Mac Hollins gone. So the reps are going to be there for Keon Coleman because he can get after it as a blocker, and he's one of the stronger guys in that receiver room. If you were to pick one guy that you think is going to surpass 1,000 yards this season, Josh Palmer or Keon Coleman, let's take Dalton Kincaid and all those things out of the equation. If you think one receiver other than Shakir could break 1,000, who do you think it is? Do you think it's Palmer? Do you think it's Coleman? Am I sleeping on Samuel or Elijah Moore here with the 1,000-yard talk? Like, which of these two guys, or if you want to add in another guy, do you think could go over 1,000 this year?
Wow. I'll say this right off the bat. I don't think either one is. But I think just based on what we saw from a yards per reception last year, going into year 2, probably going to want him to be somewhat of more of a focal point of the offense. I would probably say Coleman, but I will say that I don't think either one of them are coming close to 1,000 yards.
I got Josh Palmer. I think I'll take Josh Palmer in this equation. I think he's going to have a bigger year than people expect. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, everybody eats. They like to spread the ball around. So who knows exactly what that impact is. But I think I've got some higher hopes for Josh Palmer than some other people do. Like, I think we're sleeping on just how quickly the Buffalo Bills went to acquire him when free agency began and how much money they paid him. Right? Is it crazy money? No. But they paid him a good chunk of change. They targeted him relatively early in the free agency period. I think the Buffalo Bills have a plan for Josh Palmer, and that'll be really intriguing. But it's hard not to get cautiously optimistic. I like that word from Heather, right? About someone like Keon Coleman too, and where he's going in year 2, because he has clearly shown in what we've seen on social media, right, that he's been putting in the work this offseason as well. There was a comment here about Khalil Shakir that I really liked from Music Blogger 87. He says, Khalil Shakir needs to step up and become elite. I think he already is elite in a niche sense as Josh Allen's security blanket. He's kind of like Cole Beasley on steroids a little bit, but getting that extension, it's going to be really interesting to see if maybe the Buffalo Bills round out Khalil Shakir's game a little bit more. A lot of, and not all, because there are plenty of examples of this not being the case, right? But a lot of what Khalil Shakir did this year was sort of being an extension of the running game and catching things around or behind the line of scrimmage, getting him downfield more. I wonder if that's something the Buffalo Bills are going to look to do now that they've paid him a pretty significant chunk of change.
I would be surprised if they did, given that the investment they made in Palmer and given that they hope that Keon Coleman maybe can do a little bit more on the sidelines as well. Like, I think you continue to do what Khalil Shakir does best in working the intermediate areas and around the line of scrimmage. Like, I mean, to me, I think he's already elite at what he does. I think when you saw what happened a few years ago where Cole Beasley made the all-pro team as a slot receiver, you could see something like that happening with Khalil Shakir in that same type of situation, that he has the potential to do that. So can he build on some of the numbers he had last year? Surely. I don't think any Bills player is going to get 1,000 yards, but I think even him playing in the intermediate role with the volume that he's going to get, he has the best chance to do it, especially with his yards after catch ability. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they try to change things up with Shakir or just kind of continue to do what they have had success with him doing and use guys that they paid money like Josh Palmer to stretch the field, right? So it'll be interesting as for Shakir to see if some of that utilization does change in some of the camp reports we get. But I would be a little surprised if they try to do too much more with him than what they already are doing.
I think one of the guys that most fans are going to have their eyes glued to at the start of training camp is sort of the wild card of this group, and that's Elijah Moore. We loved him in the pre-draft process years ago coming out of Ole Miss. He's got that one thing that people really covet in the National Football League, and that is speed. Now, is he a little on the smaller side, and is he used mostly out of the slot? Yes, right? But he's still, even though he's on the shorter side, he's rather built. He's very, very chalked up, rocked up. Is he going to play a little bit more on the outside than maybe he did in some other places? Who knows? That is one of the things that I think that people are going to be paying attention to at training camp. What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore, the wild card? Are people hyping him up too much? Are people sleeping on him a little bit? Like where do you stand in the Elijah Moore sort of spectrum here?
What I like about Elijah Moore is his suddenness in his route running, right? He has the ability to kind of twitch very quickly. He does have speed as well. I think that there are a lot of people, like, to me, I think he's consensusly kind of fitting in where he should be from an expectation standpoint. You have some people who are kind of maybe like a little bit more hyped about him. You have some people saying, hey, we shouldn't expect anything out of this guy. But I actually think that like you can go into training camp and feel like he is going to be a contributor on this team this year. And I think you could go back at the end of the season at some point, maybe next year, and say like, hey, he was one of the best signings we made late in free agency, way later than even when we signed a guy like Leonard Floyd a few years ago. And he turned out to be one of the better signings of free agency later than the initial rush. I just feel like Elijah Moore, his history's not really played with great quarterbacks. He has had 2 straight seasons of 60 catches, which has been a nice little revival for him in his career, but now he gets to play with Josh Allen. So if he's ever going to break out and kind of perform to maybe some of the expectation he had coming out of the draft, which was, a late first, second round type of player, this is a chance for him to do that. And to be quite honest, he's got a year 2 Keon Coleman. He's got a, we'll call him average veteran in Josh Palmer. Can he stay healthy? What are they going to do with him? Curtis Sam? Like, there are paths for Elijah Moore to make some hay in training camp. I'll put it that way.
And Roy Collins comes in and says, I have more faith in Curtis Samuel than Elijah Moore. And that's why this training camp is going to be fun. Like, which one of these guys are going to separate themselves? Is it going to be Josh Palmer or Keon Coleman? It's going to be a little bit of both. Is it going to be Elijah Moore? Is it going to be Curtis Samuel? It's going to be a little bit of both. Like, who are the ones who are going to step up and be the biggest contributors? It's hard to believe, right? Just in reality, right? We'd like all 5 of these guys to eat and be key cogs in this Buffalo Bills offense, but chances are three of them are going to separate themselves from the other two. So it'll be interesting over the course of training camp to see who those guys are. And obviously we all expect Khalil Shakir to be that one, and the Buffalo Bills have paid him as such.
Well, and you're in a good position of the Bills for that to be the case, right? Because last year, like, if the three guys that you wanted to do it didn't, which was Samuel, Coleman, and Shakir, well, if Samuel's injured, now you're expecting Mac Hollins to contribute on offense. And while I like Mac Hollins, it's not the best situation to be in. So at least now, if you're the Bills, you have five guys that you at least feel offensively can contribute if something happens with one guy or the other. So that's why I'd say, to wrap it up on the receivers, I do feel a little bit better about the group going into this season than I did last season.
And just one last note on receivers, barring injuries, because there's so many DBs that we need to roster, I have a hard time believing the Buffalo Bills are going to roster a sixth receiver. But of the guys battling for it, you have Caden Prather, who's got that boundary separating ability. You got Tyrell Shavers and Jalen Virgil, who bring sort of a gunning element to special teams. And you got Laviska Shenault, who brings sort of that kick returning intrigue to special teams. And then you have Wilkinson, right, who we signed from the Raiders, Christian Wilkinson, who had some concussion issues, but I liked him over the course of some of his preseasons in New England and over the course of his career in Las Vegas. Injuries have sort of taken a toll on him, head injuries. So there's some intrigue there. Maybe somebody can make some hay at that sixth receiver spot, but more than likely we're going to have a couple of guys who could be impactful players mid-season should some injuries happen. I like some of that depth the Buffalo Bills have at the back end.
Yeah, it's a good group top to bottom. I mean, we saw Virgil get called up a couple times last year. We saw Shavers with the big TD against the Jets. And, you still have got Hamler, who's now been with the team for a couple off seasons. So the bottom of that sort of depth chart is a decent floor right there. I would say it's a pretty good floor. And Shenault, like, he's almost like a thick Samuel, I would say. Like, if you want to use him in that similar type of way, he was kind of like that poor man's Deebo Samuel, when he came out with Jacksonville. So we liked him at that time, but again, his career never kind of really, sometimes it's hard for guys like that to really find like what their role is going to be. You're kind of seeing that happen with Velus Jones now with the Bears, like what's his role going to be? And Chenault's kind of taking that same path. So don't expect him to make the team, but he gives you a body for returning kicks and stuff in the preseason as well.
At tight end, I think a lot of the eyes and a lot of the attention is going to be on Dalton Kincaid heading into year 3. A lot of injuries last year hampered him. I know Ty Dunn just did that nice long piece on Dalton Kincaid, sort of looking back at last season and all the injuries he dealt with, the drop he obviously had in the not the conference championship, but the AFC divisional game against Kansas City. You have Dawson Knox, who's about to become a father. So he's, again, we talk about Josh Allen going into the next stage of his life and leadership. You have Dawson Knox heading into the next stage of his life and leadership as well. And then probably one of the truer camp battles that we're going to see, 5th round pick Jackson Hawes versus Zach Davidson, who was on the practice squad all last year. Two very different types of tight ends. Jackson Hawes is obviously a special teams guy, a inline blocking type of guy, whereas Zach Davidson is more of that sort of, guy who's going to go out and not run routes, but like work the seam. That's what I'm looking for. Like that taller, bigger body guy, going to work the seam, go up for some jump balls, etc. Not as much of a blocker as Zach Davidson is. So it'll be really interesting to see. To me, if it were up to me, it's pretty much already been decided. I would think it would take a monumentally bad training camp from Jackson Hawes to lose out to Zach Davidson. His special teams ability, his blocking upside, to me, that's just too much. We have the receivers already in that room and guys like Dalton Kincaid. You don't really need that in Zach Davidson, and you could probably stash him on the practice squad. So going to be really interesting to watch Dalton Kincaid, how he progresses, Jackson Hawes, how he develops, and someone named Kaliki Latu is here as well, getting some reps with the last team.
Yeah, you really need Dalton Kincaid if you're the Bills, I think, to have a bounce back year. I know we like this receiver room more than we did a year ago, but there's still some question marks there, right? If you can take some of the pressure off of Keon Coleman going into year 2 and some of the new faces, like Dalton Kincaid has to be a guy that steps up. He's a 1st round pick 2 years ago, had the great rookie season, hampered by injuries a year ago. you really round out that room with Kincaid, Knox, and Hawes. Like Knox is kind of like a combination of Kincaid and Hawes. Like if you kind of were going to blend both of their abilities and create like an average to above average tight end, you'd get Dawson Knox. So those three guys make sense to me, but really all eyes on Kincaid going into year 3. Like we said, all eyes on Keon Coleman going into year 2. Those two guys have a big spotlight on them.
Onto the offensive line. At tackle, you have your two stalwarts in Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. There was a really young, exciting player last year that we didn't get to see a lot of in the regular season. He also got hurt for a bit, and that's Tillin Grable. It's going to be fun to watch his development in the preseason and watch him continue to grow. A lot of people think he could be sort of the next big tackle that Aaron Cromer develops as he sort of learns behind Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. And then the Bills typically like to keep that fourth offensive tackle, or at least a guy who can be a tackle guard swing. And there's some real competition for Ryan Vandemark this year. The Buffalo Bills drafted Chase Lunt in the 6th round, and the Buffalo Bills also have, don't sleep on Richard Garage, right? Going into his 3rd season as a UDFA, he's got that prototypical size you look for. He's been literally learning the system for 3 years. Don't sleep on him, I think, as a guy who might make it as the 4th offensive tackle. And then you've got Travis Clayton as well. I think he's back. I don't really know. I think we'll find out this week whether he is back, but he is that sort of that international pathways player. Ryan Vandemark versus Chase Lunt is an interesting battle, though, I think. Again, like I said, don't sleep on Garage, but RVD versus Lunt is one of those camp battles I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, you would think RVD certainly would have the inside track going into camp, but that could change. The Bills do like RVD, and he's filled in when he's had to. Obviously, we don't want to have to use him if we can help it. But I do think like there's probably a fairly good chance that you can get Chase Lunt through to the practice squad if it ends up being that way, or maybe he can be. Maybe the Bills end up keeping like who knows, right? Who knows if they feel like he can be a little bit more of a versatile player as well. It'll be interesting to me to as well with Chase Lunt to see where he lines up during training camp, because that could give you some intel on what their plans may be for him. As we know, Aaron Cromer likes his guys to move around and learn the different positions on the line. So RVD certainly with a leg up to start camp, but may not end that way. I'd have to pencil him in right now. But yeah, the Bills are looking good on the edges of that offensive line, and you just hope that those guys stay healthy. Grable, another one that you hope can stay healthy to see what his development could turn into for beyond 2025.
And if a guy like Chase Lunt or Richard Garage can win that 4th offensive tackle job, all of a sudden Ryan Vandemark becomes trade bait. And we've seen Sean McDermott flip guys in the past for draft picks. I mean, he traded, who was that center who was so bad? He was so bad from North Carolina. Who was that center?
Russell Bodine.
Russell Bodine, so bad. He got assets for him, right? Like, so maybe you see Brandon Beane working some of his magic with RVD. RVD stepped, like, people forget this. Like, Spencer Brown missed a game and a half last year, and RVD stepped right in. RVD started that Kansas City game in the regular season where we beat them. Like, obviously, the Buffalo Bills probably gave him a lot more help than they would have given a guy like Spencer Brown, but he held his own. And I got to think that general managers around the National Football League would put on that tape from last year in those 2 games that he started and say to themselves, like, I'll give a 6th round draft pick up for this guy if he were to become available. So that'll be really something to watch as we get to the final stages of training camp. On the interior, I don't know if there's intrigue for 2025 because it's pretty much set. Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, David Edwards. You have your depth in Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Pran Granger. Maybe somebody like Kendrick Green steps up and makes things interesting, but everything's pretty much set there. I think the intrigue is in a little summer scouting for the 2026 season because Connor McGovern's contract is up after this year. I expect the Buffalo Bills to extend him. And David Edwards' contract is up after this year. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills are going to extend a guy like David Edwards. So keeping an eye on guys like Alec Anderson, keeping an eye on guys like Cedric Van Pran Granger, that's going to be important because if guys get hurt, they obviously need to step up. And they could be legitimately in line to start in 2026. And I would throw Chase Lunt in there too, because I'm really high on Chase Lunt. I think if you kick Chase Lunt inside because he's got those shorter arms, he is a mauler in the run game. Now, I know he's a little bit taller than you like to see for a guard, but even if you kick a guy like Chase Lunt between Tillin Grable, Chase Lunt, Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Pran Granger, those guys could all be fighting for starting roles on the offensive line in 2026. And I threw Tillin Grable in there as well, because if he's just so good that you got to find a spot for him, maybe he could slide into left guard as well.
Yeah, there was a reason we did interior offensive line as one of the 4 position groups for the summer scouting series. And that included center, by the way, center and guard for that show. And we went through 10 prospects to keep an eye on this year in college football. So check that out for the 2026 season, because as you mentioned, 2, as it stands, UFAs, David Edwards and Connor McGovern. And my wish list during that summer scouting show on interior offensive line was like, let's get a Connor McGovern extension done during training camp before the season starts. Would be nice. Yes, would it make James Cook mad? So be it. Don't care. Like, I would love to see Connor McGovern locked up for another 2 or 3 years beyond 2025, if we can make that happen as a training camp deal before the season starts, so he doesn't go into this season playing on an expiring contract. But we will see.
Hard Knocks. One of the storylines could be in Hard Knocks too. Maybe Connor McGovern brings the pizza oven with him to St. John Fisher and gives the turkey burgers a run for their money too. So that could be a training camp storyline at Hard Knocks. I know the beat guys will be all over that if Connor McGovern brings his pizza stove or his pizza oven to St. John Fisher. But looking at it, the offense in totality, you got Josh Allen, James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, Reggie Gilliam, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. I'm throwing Jackson Hawes in there. I'm doing it. Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Tillin Grable, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, David Edwards, Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Pran Granger. That is 21 spots accounted for. They're going to keep a second quarterback. We just don't know who yet. Likely Trubisky. That's 22. They're going to keep a 4th tackle. We just don't know who yet. That's 23. The true battles that we're going to see: Mitch versus White, maybe Hawes versus Davidson, and RVD versus Lunt, with maybe Richard Garage throwing his hat in the ring. Then there is the question of, like, do we keep a 6th receiver or do we keep a 10th offensive lineman? And that is where what we're going to talk about next comes into play: the defensive battles and the special teams, because you have a special teams unit that largely struggled in 2024. They brought in a new coordinator in Chris Tabor. They brought an adult into the room for the first time in what feels like forever to coach special teams. It'll be interesting to see who carves out roles on special teams under Tabor and how that impacts roster construction. 5 versus 6 linebackers is going to be huge. Do we need to keep a 6th linebacker because of special teams? We've seen the Bills do it traditionally in the past, but maybe Chris Tabor approaches special teams differently. We don't have to carry 6 because we're loaded at DB. We're going to want to keep a trillion DBs probably. That could affect the wide receiver position. Like, there's so many questions that we're going to talk about now as we get to defense and special teams. And on the defensive side, a total makeover. It's going to be a totally different defense that we see out there this training camp, and it was a necessary one. The 2024 squad had us ripping our hair out, especially on third downs. They hit some of their lows late in the season last year in back-to-back weeks against the Rams and against the Lions. This is a group that dealt with injury after injury and relied heavily on being turnover merchants, something that McDermott's defense tends to do well year after year. It's not total luck that they force so many turnovers. So a lot of new faces here on the defensive side of the ball, how they blend in and bringing stability to that defense while maintaining turnovers is going to be key. And that's what we got to keep our eye on this training camp.
You have to. I mean, look, I know the turnover margin and just the turnovers in general, the takeaways from this defense have been good over the past couple years, but this defense will drive you nuts, right? They'll get those turnovers, but then they'll be one of the worst third down defenses statistically in the NFL all season. And then in the big moments, you find yourself clinging to the hope of needing that turnover because you don't really have the confidence that they can get off the field otherwise. And it is a very difficult feeling and position to be in as a fan watching the team sometimes. And of course, I'm sure as a coaching staff, and certainly injuries play a part, but this team really needs to improve on its third down defense this year. And this team really needs to improve especially on the 3rd and long defense, where it seemed to be an issue for this team, giving up chunk plays on 3rd and long. So health, makeover, whatever, we want to call it, it's going to be a new look defense this year. And yeah, I'm ready for it. I'll just say it that way. I'm ready for it.
James Leclerc comes in and says, not to mention Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi coming back after suspension. And this is where it gets interesting, right? Let's start with the edge group. You got Gregory Rousseau, you got Joey Bosa, AJ Epinesa, Michael Hoyt, who will be suspended for the first 6 games of the season. You've got Landon Jackson, who is currently on the NFI list, but the Bills have let it be known, and Landon Jackson has let it be known that he's not going to miss any time. He'll be ready for the start of training camp or right when training camp starts. And you've got Javon Solomon as well. Then you have 2 guys. Dave, I don't even have it written down in my notes. Can you tell me where Paris Shand or Hayden Harris went to college?
No, I can't.
I couldn't my notes, and I'm not even going to Google it. So to me, it's an easy 5, right? It's Rousseau, it's Bosa, it's Epinesa, it's Landon Jackson, it's Javon Solomon. The real question that we're going to be watching throughout training camp is who gets the most reps, who's on the left side, who's on the right side, who's in the running situations, who's in the pass rushing situations. And these guys, these 5 are essentially going to duke it out. And then the question becomes like, what do we do when Michael Hoyt returns? Is there any way? I can't imagine there being anything that would convince the Buffalo Bills to trade AJ Epinesa in late August and take that depth away, knowing they'll have to get through 6 games without Michael Hoyt until they can get to Michael Hoyt. I can't imagine a world where they trust Landon Jackson, Javon Solomon enough, especially when you want to keep Joey Bosa on a pitch count. But there's just so many things that could happen here with this edge rusher position.
There are a lot of things that can happen. And I think you could even end up seeing a situation 6-7 weeks into the season where maybe it's a player from another position group that gets injured, and it allows you to maybe have 6 edge players on the roster come week 7, right? Like,
I think we did that last year in a couple of times. Like
I'm just saying,
stuff,
so. don't rule it out, right? Depending on sort of what the needs are for the team at that time. But I certainly wouldn't be trading away depth and good depth in August at this point. It's not like you're trading away Russell Bodine, someone who's really a fringe talent anyway. Like AJ Epinesa, like Joey Bosa is going to be on a pitch count. Like you said, he's had plenty of injury history. You've got Landon Jackson now, who's got something, says he's going to be back for camp. Okay, fine. Hoyt's going to be suspended. Like, to me, like AJ Epinesa is still going to be counted on here, or at least be your backstop in case of something happens here. And like, you just spent this whole offseason trying to get this defense right. Like, you shouldn't just be going out trading away guys for the sake of trading them, because 6-7 weeks down the road, you might have a decision to make. Like, I welcome that decision when the time comes and they can figure it out, I'm sure. So yes, Bosa, Jackson, those guys hopefully are healthy for training camp, and we'll just kind of see what happens there.
It'll be fun to watch Joey Bosa too. We didn't get a chance to look at him at all this spring because obviously he was dealing with that injury, but he should be back relatively early in the start of training camp, or they said he'll be good to go for training camp, but we'll see. And Michael Hoyt's got sort of that position versatility. A lot of people have compared him to like the Lorenzo Alexanders of the world. So maybe the Buffalo Bills keep 5 traditional linebackers, have Michael Hoyt as that linebacker / edge rusher, and then have 5 edge rushers too. So that is something the Buffalo Bills, maybe they keep 6 linebackers to start the year, but then cut a linebacker in week 6 or week 7 when Michael Hoyt returns. So that's a good point by you there. Interior defensive line is another story here. This is where it gets super interesting, right? You got Ed Oliver, you got Daquan Jones, you got Larry Ogunjobi, you got TJ Sanders, you got Dwayne Carter, you got Deion Walker loaded there, right? You have Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, the vets. Ogunjobi is going to miss the first 6 games because of suspension. Then you have Dwayne Carter, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, the young guys. You also have Zion Logue, a sort of a one tech you could throw into this equation. You got Casey Rogers, Marcus Epps, and Devin Brandt Epps, Marcus Harris and Devin Brandt Epps as well. Again, to me, this seems like an easy 5, but you have the question of like, what do we do in week 6? And you have all of these young guys sort of duking it out for who's going to get the most reps. Because if Deion Walker comes into camp and Deion Walker blows up and has an awesome camp and an awesome preseason, guess who's probably going to get more reps in the regular season to start the season? Deion Walker, even though Dwayne Carter was drafted ahead of him the year previous, even though TJ Sanders was drafted ahead of him. Like, if he comes in and produces, boom, he's going to be the guy. So that to me is the intrigue, is who produces in camp, because they're all so young. It doesn't, their draft position does not matter. It's who produces. are the ones who are going to be on the field in the regular season.
Yeah, although I do expect TJ Sanders to be
Yes.
The dude, the dude or the dude next to Ed Oliver, right? Like I think that the Bills are counting on that to be the case. I think he is maybe the most important interior defensive lineman outside of Ed Oliver on this team this year. Walker, is he going to be full go at camp? That we haven't heard otherwise. So let's see what happens with him. Ogunjobi, you mentioned suspended. Another similar situation. Like if the Bills end up making it through the first 6 weeks of the season fully healthy across the entirety of the defensive line, that's the edge and interior, then there's a decision to be made on what happens there. I am not sure. This is the one where I struggle to figure out what to do, because with edge, I can see like Hoyt being a linebacker and them figuring that's fine. The numbers game at the interior is a little bit tougher. In my mind, I kind of had figured that maybe they would somehow find a way to IR Deion Walker, but if he's really not hurt and he's actually going to be playing and possibly making an impact, then you're not going to do that. So it's tough. Like Dwayne Carter is not going to be a cut candidate probably because he's only going into year 2. Daquan Jones, they kind of need him to sort of be the steadying presence until a guy like maybe like TJ Sanders can get up to speed and take over that role. But yeah, there might be a surprise, I would say, in this group. I mean, just from the numbers game.
Yeah, it could be a guy like Daquan Jones getting his walking papers week 7. Like that could very well, if some of these young guys step up, that could be the case. And maybe you can get Daquan back onto the practice squad as a veteran guy, and because he doesn't declare waivers. And then you got 3 games worth of him after that. You can sign him back to the roster. If somebody gets hurt, you'll have him available for the playoffs, et cetera. So maybe they work out a deal with a veteran like Daquan Jones week 6 or 7, depending on how things are going and who stepped up and who hasn't. And maybe Daquan Jones finds himself off this roster midseason.
Well, I mean, and we want Daquan to be back to what Daquan was before that
100%.
injury, but he didn't really play that well last year.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, we love Daquan and we've seen what he can do at his peak with this team, but are his peak, does he have any peak left in him? Does he have any really above average play left in him? We hope he does. Yeah. But he might not. We don't, we don't know. So,
and that's where TJ Sanders, right, is like a true wild card. Because yes, despite his size, he's a run stuffing DT. Like, so if TJ Sanders steps up and he's your run stopping influence in the middle of that interior defensive line, if Dwayne Carter steps up in year 2 and can give you 3-tech, 1-tech flex, and you feel comfortable with TJ Sanders and Dwayne Carter, and you think Larry Ogunjobi at Oliver can, rush the passer on the other side, and you have Deion Walker, right, too, like it just could happen. Like, so TJ Sanders, all eyes on him, especially for his run stuffing. That's number 1. Deion Walker, all eyes on him because of his health, because of just his freak nature. His development, he had leverage issues. That was his issue. Was it the broken back, which he still has? I'm not going to get back into. We're not going to get back into this conversation about whether the Buffalo Bills should have drafted a guy in the 4th round who's got a broken back, but there's intrigue there, keeping your eyes on him. And then don't sleep on Dwayne Carter either, right? Bills Mafia, don't sleep on him. Like, this is what I'm about to say is very superficial, and I don't really care, right? This is a guy who was 3-time captain at Duke. He was like the academic Heisman. This is a guy who, despite having a lackluster rookie season, has embedded himself in this community, had won the home run derby at the Micah Hyde softball game, like has made his presence felt, like is just, I see him everywhere. He's not ducking. He's not hiding. He looks like a guy who is confident in himself, confident in his ability, confident in his development. And I think you're going to see a healthy Dwayne Carter this year. And I think you're going to see a different Dwayne Carter this year. I think he might be one of the surprises of training camp. It's kind of hard to be that as an interior defensive line, especially when there's not a lot of pads on. But I think we're going to walk out of training camp preseason pleasantly surprised at Dwayne Carter. And I think he's going to contribute this year.
Yeah, I hope you're right? Because in my mind, I'm thinking in 2026, it's going to be TJ and Ed as the starters, and it's going to be Walker and Dwayne Carter as the second wave. Like in my head, that's what I'm thinking for 2026. Now, who's backing up who and whatever, like that, we can figure all that out. But those are like, in my mind, the core 4 guys for beyond 2025, because Ogunjobi is going to be gone and Daquan Jones is going to be gone. So it would be great to see him contribute this year in a meaningful way, because then you can have that confidence going into 2026. Same for Walker, to be honest. Like, you want to see him contribute if you can, and then you feel pretty good about where you are with this defensive interior going into 2026.
John Robert comes in and says TJ Sanders says he's gained weight and is now 310. That would be disgustingly awesome if that's the case. I didn't see that, but I'll trust you, John. If that's the case, like, that's really exciting to see, and that's an awesome development. So, and don't sleep on Zion Logue either. I don't think Zion Logue is going to make the team, but I think he'll incubate another season on the practice squad, and you'll have a guy in Zion Logue. You just mentioned the core four in 2026 and Oliver and Sanders, Dwayne Carter, Deion Walker. Maybe you could add Zion Logue as that fifth guy, or another guy who you just keep incubating on the practice squad and have as a backup safety plan too.
He's kind of become almost like the Kingsley Jonathan of the interior for this team.
The new Elianku, right? Like the Elianku with some upside. So keep an eye out for him as well. Linebacker is intriguing. Terrell Bernard, not a big fan of his switch to the number 8, but I won't get too caught up on that. He looks bigger in some of his pictures this offseason. Like he's put on some muscle. So that's awesome to see.
It's going to be so confusing seeing number 8. I need the 43.
But I expect him to blow up and have another big year, especially with some bigger, heavier bodies in front of him. You got Matt Milano. How much juice has he still got left? He's in a contract year now, right? So he's got all the incentive in the world to play his butt off. You got Dorian Williams heading into year 3. He showed a lot of flashes last year. Every fiber of my being just wants to call Joe Andreessen and Edefon Uliofosio roster locks and call it a day at 5 guys. Just call it a day and go keep 10 DBs and keep 10 offensive linemen, just like live our happy lives, right? But who knows, right? The Buffalo Bills have a tendency to keep 6 linebackers. You have Baylon Spector, who they clearly like, but can't seem to stay healthy. You have Shaq Thompson, who they added. Is he just a veteran presence in training camp? Is he going to be a legit guy who has a chance to push for a roster spot? Time will tell. Not that I'm ever rooting against someone, but I really hope not. I hope maybe he's just like a veteran presence, a mentor, a guy that maybe they keep on the practice squad as a break glass in case of emergency guy. Mm-hmm. I'm always team roll with the youth. I like Joe Andreessen. I like Edefon Uliofosio. And then they added Keonta Jenkins, who's sort of like a linebacker, who's sort of like a safety size guy, like a drop back into pass coverage type of guy from Virginia Tech as a developmental guy. I think he's going to be interesting. I think he's going to make the practice squad. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to incubate him a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see all those various different storylines from Bernard and Milano and Dorian Williams in training camp to the battle for the 4th, 5th, and 6th spots. Hopefully not a 6th spot, but
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, I hate to say this and I'm not trying to make people mad. Like, I wouldn't just assume because Andreessen made it last year that he's going to make it again this year.
How dare you?
I do think Uliofosio is going to make it. But I do think Andreessen has a decent chance to make it if the Bills obviously decide to sort of say it's been fun while it lasted with Baylon Spector, but the injuries and just we're going to feel better with Andreessen taking that roster spot and then just having the 5 linebackers without Spector. To me, that gives you flexibility with Hoyt, right? We mentioned before, it gives you maybe flexibility with an extra defensive back, as we're going to talk about here in a second. So at the top end of this linebacking room, I like it. I like Milano, Bernard. Williams got really good, valuable playing time last year with Milano out. And obviously the Bills redid that Milano contract back in March, basically took off the 2026 year. So going into the offseason, he was under contract through 2026, not anymore. Now only under contract through this year. So it's an intriguing group. It's a good group, I think. I think health remains the biggest question sort of overhanging this group. Can this group stay healthy for the entirety, the majority of the season and when it matters in the late into the postseason? So
Sean, Brandon, if you're listening, keep 5 linebackers, please. For my sanity, keep 5 linebackers. Put the rest on the practice squad. Why? Well, because we have a lot of corners, and I like a lot of these corners, and I want the Bills to keep a lot of these corners. It'll be really interesting to see here. Now we move to the cornerbacks. To me, there's 2 roster locks. It's Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. This is boundary only. I haven't gotten a nickel yet. Those are the 2 roster locks, but just because those are the 2 roster locks doesn't mean Maxwell Hairston is a lock to start. You have Jamarcus Ingram, Trey White, Dane Jackson, and Dorian Strong, who I think are all going to try and push for that CB2 spot because it's open, it's available. And as the Buffalo Bills showed with Kyer Elam, right? If Jamarcus Ingram comes to camp and is the best boundary cornerback on the team opposite Christian Benford, he's going to start. Like if Trey White, if he's the best one, he's going to start. Like that's just how it's going to be. So Maxwell Harrison's going to have to earn it from these four guys. Who starts opposite Christian Benford? That's going to be where everyone's eyes are. Who gets the reps? When do they get the reps? How do they perform? Because it's going to have a ripple effect on the entirety of the depth chart and the roster construction of this football team. Because if Hairston wins it, it'll go one way. If Dorian Strong wins it, it'll go another way. If Trey White wins it, it'll go another way. So it'll be really interesting to see who wins that CBT.
There's, out of all the ways, the way I don't want to see Dane Jackson on the team. Sorry, I'm just sorry. I don't want to see him on the team, but like it should be Trey. It should. I mean, the top four, boundary guys should be Hairston, Trey, Strong, and Benford. Obviously, those should be your four top guys. I would imagine Strong was such a good value pick to me in the draft after you had already had gotten Hairston. Really, just like turning over the youth of that group. And look, I mean, I'm not trying to, take anything away from guys like Jamarcus Ingram, who we like as well, but like this has now become like a very strong group on paper, right? And I'll say on paper because they still got to go out and do it. Like, does Trey White have gas left in the tank if you put him in the right position? He's going to be a good mentor for Hairston because stylistically they are similar in how they play off and close on the ball, but Hairston just has that athletic ability and the speed that Trey just doesn't have at this point in his career. So that mentor-menteeship partnership between Trey and Hairston, I think, is hugely valuable. And I'm not super big on like trying to like, say like, oh, this guy's automatically going to be a good mentor for someone just because he's a veteran. Like this one, I actually think is actually going to be a very good pairing in that locker room. So, and I do like Dorian Strong as well as like as a sleeper to make a pretty good contribution this year. So very generally happy with how the Bills handled this position group throughout the offseason.
Yeah. I mean, there's an abundance here, right? And the question now becomes, when there's an abundance, what happens? John Robert comes in and says Dane Jackson will be practice squad. That would be great, right? Like if we can keep Dorian Strong, we can keep Trey White, we can keep Jamarcus Ingram, we can keep Maxwell Hairston, and then, have Dane Jackson as the security blanket on the practice squad. That would be wonderful. Pete Nana comes in and says Strong has to be kept. I'm going to try not to have the panic attacks like I did last training camp over 5th round draft picks, because I was like, oh my God, if what's his name makes it over Cedric Van Peren, or if what's his name makes it over Edifon Olufoshio, I'm going to lose my mind.
Strong shouldn't have been a 5th round pick, though. Just like Khalil Shakir shouldn't have been a 5th round pick.
And I saw people saying Jackson Hawes is the best blocker in the draft. Maybe he goes in the 3rd round or the 4th round. We got him in the 5th. So like there are some dudes that we got in the 5th round again that I had higher grades on, or I know a lot of people that I trust had higher grades on them. Like, you can't risk.
I mean, I made a graphic for Dorian Strong. That's, I mean, I
like a possible day 2 guy. Like, so again, I think Brandon Bean's been knocking it out of the park in the 5th round. Now the Bills roster is so good that we haven't had a chance to see these guys on the field, and maybe we don't even see them on the field until the 3rd or the 4th year of their contracts. But like, I don't want to lose them like we did Alex Austin, or we did, Jack Anderson. Like that might not be the best one, or Nick Broker. That might not be the best one because they didn't really do anything with their careers, but like, I think these guys are all better than those guys that I just mentioned. So it'll be real interesting to see how they go, because this is a team that wants to win a Super Bowl. So like, you've got to balance like what you think is best for the now and with what you think is best for the future. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how it all winds up. Nickel cornerback plays a role in this as well. You have Taron Johnson, obviously, as a roster lock. He'll be the starting nickel corner. Maybe you have your nickel corner of the future in Jordan Hancock, another 5th round pick, right? That we need to talk about here out of Ohio State. You have Cam Lewis. You have Daquan Hardy. Remember that guy from the 6th round last year? You got Corey Couch. You got Daryl Porter. To me, the real storyline here is going to be Hancock, right? Like, is he on the 2nd team right away? Is he on the 3rd team? Who's getting those backup behind Taron Johnson reps at nickel corner? Because if it's Jordan Hancock all of camp, you're going to feel really strongly about his chances to make the football team. You probably do so already. The versatility of Hancock and Lewis, though, it's going to have some people on notice. I think that there is room for both of these guys on the roster, quite frankly. And I think it could end up putting a guy like DeMar Hamlin on notice, because if DeMar Hamlin doesn't win a starting safety job, right? Cole Bishop does what we want Cole Bishop to do, and it's Taylor Rapp and it's Cole Bishop, and Derek Forrest steps up and shows you he can be your third safety, and you're looking at, roster cutdown day, I'd rather have Cam Lewis than DeMar Hamlin, because I think Cam Lewis would be a better special teamer than DeMar Hamlin. I'd rather have Jordan Hancock than DeMar Hamlin, because I think Jordan Hancock is Taron Johnson's nickel cornerback replacement in waiting, and I think he'll probably play special teams better than DeMar Hamlin. So guys like DeMar Hamlin, even Derek Forrest, could be on notice here because of the versatility of Hancock and Lewis. So it'll be interesting to see where the Bills play them and how they move them around.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's still hard to this point to separate a little bit the football from the man, and we know the documentary coming out with DeMar like, if I'm picking Jordan Hancock or DeMar Hamlin, I'm gonna take Jordan Hancock, right? Cam Lewis and DeMar Hamlin, if it comes down to those two, like, I can maybe be convinced one way or the other to keep Hamlin over Lewis, but I'm not gonna lose sleep if they keep Lewis over Hamlin. And I do think that Derek Forrest, I think, will be the third safety. So in my opinion, I think he's going to be one of the guys I'm hopeful, like you mentioned about Dwayne Carter, kind of stepping up and hopeful that he's going to kind of turn some heads at camp. I'm hoping that Derek Forrest is a guy that does that as well at that safety position, which could, again, like six corners, for safety, whatever you want to label them, 10, 11 defensive backs is a possibility here.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. We haven't even talked about Brandon Codrington either, and whether Brandon Codrington makes the team as a return-only guy, because that's going to count towards your DB numbers. At the safety position, obviously you have Taylor Rapp. He's pretty entrenched as one of the starting safeties. The Bills, they love the guy. Now, the issue with Taylor Rapp is he misses some time with injuries because of the way he plays. And the big question is also going to be, and you mentioned Derek Forrest, which is a big part of that. Like, if something happens to Taylor Rapp, do we have the depth there? Because we didn't last year. Like, going back and watching like the Lions game and watching Kareem Jackson just get run around in the second half of the Lions game was hard to watch. So you want to have depth, but you also, who is starting next to Taylor Rapp? Is DeMar Hamlin, because he started last year and because he's the veteran, is he going to line up next to Taylor Rapp day one at training camp? Or is it going to be Cole Bishop, the second round pick, the guy you want to win this job? Like, that's going to be that's going to be the first thing I look for when I'm scanning Twitter on Wednesday morning. Who is our first team free safety opposite Taylor Rapp?
It's gotta be Cole Bishop. I mean, like, it has to be, right? Like, I mean, I know you gave Hamlin a $2 million contract, you brought him back, but it's like, that's not the long game here, right? Like, you need to give Bishop reps, as many as you can next to Rapp. And I'm not even ready to even say like one's a free safety and one's a strong safety. Like, I think you can make the case that Rapp might even be the free safety and Bishop might be the strong safety, or whatever you want to label them. Mm-hmm. But I think those two guys have to be your plan, at least, to be the starting two guys come week one. It has to be your plan.
Yeah. For the Bills. I agree 100%. I'm really looking forward to seeing Cole Bishop play, seeing him healthy, seeing him out there in year two, really hoping for the best there. And if there is one UDFA who could push for a roster spot, Wande Owens, I don't really know anything about him, but I know he has a really high RAS. So there are some people in the scouting community who are like, this guy's a pretty good athlete. Maybe he's a practice squad spot. Maybe he surprises some people with that athleticism and can fight for a special team spot. If there is one UDFA who's going to push for a roster spot, who knows? Could be Wande Owens. So just remember that name, I guess, as we head into training camp. And plenty of people have said that before me. So I'll try not to take too much credit if it happens. Special teams.
We'll still take some.
I'll still take some. I always do. If you just tweet good things about every player and bad things about every player, you'll have receipts that you can go back to.
So covered.
That's my that's what I do for every draft year. It's just say one good thing about every prospect, one bad thing about every prospect. You can go back to it. Yeah. Special teams. We're gonna be talking a lot about special teams, I feel like, this summer. Chris Tabor obviously is now in place as the special teams coordinator. So you have a new sort of vision for how that unit is going to operate. Obviously, you have some new kick return rules this year too, which the Bills have really harped on in interviews. And they brought in a couple of guys, like they brought Darrington Evans back. They brought Laviska Shenault in to sort of maybe fight for a kick return exclusive role. So that's interesting. But you got Punter Palooza 2025 between Brad Robbins, the worst punter in football last year, and Jake Camarda, a guy who got drafted ahead a couple of years ago of the punt god. So that's pretty interesting. We're going to have holding conversations all summer. Kill me now that we have to have those conversations. Joe B will be tracking like an absolute freak, probably the success rate of Tyler Bass with each of these two holding for him. Tyler Bass's confidence is going to be a talking point of training camp, and obviously the return dynamics. Darrington Evans, Brandon Codrington, Laviska Chenault, whoever else throws their hat in the ring in the return game, Daquan Hardy. So a ton of different special team storylines to talk about this summer.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tyler Bass, I mean, that kick against Miami last year seemed to have been a turning point for him. And like, it's something that, yeah, we'll see how it goes into training camp. But like, I'm less concerned right now with Tyler Bass as I am with kind of all the other stuff that comes along with special teams. Tabor being the new coordinator, we've got to get better on coverage, on kickoffs. We were not too great on that a year ago. We've got to just be sharper in general, not just on the pure kicking side of special teams, but the coverage side, the timeliness, avoiding the penalties, all that stuff has to come through, hopefully, with the new special teams coach. And we'll see kind of what happens with the punter competition. Certainly, it's certainly something that we thought, we thought like the Bills were going to cut Sam Martin way earlier than they actually did. They did end up doing it. And now you got Robbins and Camarda there. And, Camarda was a name in the pre-draft process, like you said, and we'll see. He didn't have a great season statistically, the last time he was kicking, but first couple years, solid. And we'll see if he can bounce back.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. My expectation here is that the offense is going to outpace the defense early in training camp just because there's just so many new faces, right? So you got Bobby Babich going into year 2. We didn't even talk about Bobby Babich either, right? Real big prove-it year for him as a defensive play caller. So many new faces, so many legitimate competitions, right? Like fighting for roster spot, not even roster spots, fighting for reps and like active game day roster spots along the defensive line. That's going to be huge. Seeing the impact that Ryan Nielsen has along the defensive line, that's going to be huge. Legitimate battle for roster spots in the back half of the linebacking core. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. The CB2 battle, the safety 2 battle behind, across from Taylor Rapp. Legit competitions in training camp, legit depth competitions for roster spots in training camp. Like a lot of the eyes is going to be on the defense and the special teams this year. Like we're going to have some long shows because we know we like to talk our offense, but there's going to be a lot to talk about on defense as well. All right. Before we head out of here this evening, a couple of things I want to talk about. Number one is I want to have a little fun this training camp. I want to loosen things up a little bit at the end of every show. So one of the things that I want to do between now and the start of the regular season is I want to start enshrining some Buffalo Bills legends into what I am dubbing the Air Raid Hour Training Camp Hall of Fame. And what we're going to do every week, Dave, and I want you guys to send us messages on social media or put comments on YouTube, right? I want you guys to nominate some players for this. Who are some absolute Buffalo Bills preseason training camp legends that we need to nominate for the Training Camp Hall of Fame? I have chosen myself the first enshrinee into the Hall of Fame. But again, like I said, I want you guys to start nominating some people over the next couple of weeks, and I'll start looking over these names, and I will start, we'll add one guy every week to this Training Camp Hall of Fame. And the first enshrinee, Dave, Joique Bell, running back. 2010 training camp legend Joique Bell, who finished 5th in the preseason in rushing. He had 2 touchdowns that preseason, including a 28-yarder against the Washington then Redskins in week 2. Now, he was released on cutdown day to much controversy. The Bills decided to roll with their big 3 of Fred Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, and CJ Spiller. Can't blame the Buffalo Bills for that, but you have to put yourself in a time machine back to 2010, and you have to remember what the talk of training camp was back then. And that is Marshawn Lynch going to be a Buffalo Bill? And what happened week 4 of that season? The Buffalo Bills traded Marshawn Lynch. And who wasn't there on the practice squad anymore because he got called up after a huge preseason to take that RB3 role from Marshawn Lynch? You know who wasn't there? Joik
The
Bell.
Joik store. Yeah.
He was in Philadelphia. Now, did he do anything in Philadelphia that year? No, he did not. He did not. But he would go on, Dave, to play in 67 total games over the course of his career, mostly with the Detroit Lions, registering 564 carries for 2,241 yards. That is a 4-yard per carry average, by the way, 22 rushing touchdowns, and he chipped in 162 career receptions for 1,638 yards and another touchdown. Joik Bell, Buffalo Bills training camp legend. And as EB says, quoting preseason stats, football is so back. Yes, football is back, people. And
we're going to double it up. We're going to double it up.
We're going to double it up
with another running back going in from my nomination.
So I don't know if you're going to go Christian Wade. I don't know if you're going to go Dwayne Wright. I don't know if you're going to go Lionel Collins, Marcus Murphy.
I'm going Marcus Murphy.
Who's that little guy? Shad Williams. There's so many running backs we could.
Going Marcus Murphy. I'm going Marcus Murphy here. And this is because Marcus Murphy was with the Bills from 2017 through training camp of 2019. He got cut at the end of training camp 2019. But 2017, the first year that the Bills broke the playoff drought, Marcus Murphy, a legend in the preseason, high yards per carry, made it through that 2017 season on the practice squad. 2018 came back, made it as well. 2019 had an electric punt return for a touchdown to wrap up the preseason against the Carolina Panthers. Did not make the team, but went out with a bang with that 79-yard punt return touchdown in 2019. That year, obviously, was a huge year for Josh Allen, 2019. And so I'm putting Marcus Murphy as maybe not the most notable running back of all those you mentioned, but from a timeline perspective and when he came in 2017 to then how he went out with that big punt return TD, I'm putting Marcus Murphy in there.
There's just so many, I feel like, running backs and wide receivers. I see the Brandon Rileys, the Rod Streeters, the Duke Williams of the world. There's so many receivers and running backs, and I'm sure if I rack my brain, some quarterbacks. So I'm challenging you guys in the comments section. Get me some tight ends. Get me some defensive linemen. Get me some offensive linemen. Get me some defensive players in general. Get me there was a kicker a couple of years ago. He's still in the league. Oh my gosh. He gave, yes, Chase McLaughlin. Yes. I think he might have to go in the preseason Hall of Fame too. So
I just put a name in there for you wanted a defensive lineman? Give me Eddie Yarborough.
Daryl Johnson too. The former 7th round draft pick.
Sean Merriman.
Yes. Was CGIU, right? Yeah. Hit us up in the comment section. Hit us up on social media. We really, we want to hear some of the training camp Hall of Fame nominations. We got 2 already in Marcus Murphy and Joik Bell. So that'll just about do it for us this evening. Before we go, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a monumental show because it is the last Air Raid hour that Dave will be here as a father of one. Our girl dad is becoming a boy dad this week. Dave, tell the people your big news.
Yeah, so today is the due date, by the way. So I'm here doing the show.
Ultimate gamer.
I'm here doing the show. Could get the call at any time. But no, today is the due date. Wasn't anything doing today. Ashley went to the doctor. Was not quite ready. So tomorrow we're going in no matter what tomorrow night. So by tomorrow night, Wednesday morning, assuming all goes well, be a father of 2 here, 1 girl, 1 boy, and should be back in plenty of time for next Monday's show. So there we go.
I just need everyone in the comment section to know I gave Dave every chance to duck out of this show. I was like, I'll go solo. I'll find Joe DeRosa, hiding somewhere. I'll pull him out. You don't need to do this, but he wanted to be here because he's a podcasting legend, ladies and gentlemen.
First show back after the summer break, I had to do it, man. I had to do it.
Thank you guys so much. Comment section was popping off as usual. There are 3 ways in which you can support us here at the Air Raid Hour. The easiest way, the tier 1 of supporting us here, is just smashing that like button. It's the number one thing you can do, helps with the algorithm. Second thing is we really would appreciate it. Word of mouth is how we want to spread this thing. So if you know friends, family, anyone really that you think would enjoy the Air Raid Hour, click that little share button, copy the link, text it to them, email it to them. Let them know what we're doing here every Monday night. Let them know they can listen on demand if they're not available every Monday night. Let the people know if you think they'll enjoy this show about the Air Raid Hour. We'd really appreciate that. And then the last thing you can do is once this thing is done being live, we really appreciate and we enjoy the live chat that goes on during the show. But once the show is over, if you want to leave any kind of comment, a go Bills, a criticism of something we said, a criticism of the way I look, I'm all for it, whatever it is. All comments matter, right, to the algorithm. Just anything you can do in a hot take you have, a thought you have a topic you want to suggest, whatever it is, right? Put it in the comment section after the video is done being live. And the more comments the video gets, helps us with the algorithm as well. So those are the 3 ways you can support us here at the Air Raid Hour. Super appreciate it. Dave, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I really appreciate it. And I also want to just say a special thanks to everyone who tuned in for the Summer Scouting Series. A new thing for us this year. And obviously, Judge, you'll be part of it next year around.
Yeah.
But I think we'll have some really good cut-ups we can come back to from that series as we kind of get into the college football season and into the draft next year. But yeah, appreciate you all for that.
Thank you guys so much. You were awesome as usual. Until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!